If you're like us, you've probably seen references to something called Munchausen's by proxy and been curious, without really understanding what it is or how it may affect people. That's why we were excited to hear about the new podcast, Nobody Should Believe Me.
The host, novelist Andrea Dunlop, takes an in-depth look at this subject. No one has ever done this before. She talks with people who have been affected by this condition. She even speaks with a perpetrator.
We've already listened to the first 2 episodes, and we can tell you that Andrea doesn't dwell on the darkness. She takes great pains not to be gory or exploitative. This show has heart. It focuses on the humanity of everyone involved.
And what makes this podcast extra special is that Andrea has a deeply personal connection to this subject. Someone very close to her was investigated for Munchausen by proxy. That gives the show a real emotional punch. When Andrea is listening to people tell stories about how they've been affected by this condition, she is not some uninvolved outsider. She has lived through the very same pain they have. She understands them. And through this podcast, she helps all of us understand them too.
New episodes drop every Thursday. Listen and subscribe to Nobody Should Believe Me on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Content warning. This episode contains discussion of murder, violence, and racism.
There's an old quote you may have heard. It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. How much of what we know about the Speedway, Indiana Burger Chef murders just ain't so? Probably quite a lot. Last week we told you about one of those things. The sketch of the clean-shaven male suspect, which we have seen over and over again, simply cannot be relied upon. The witness who helped the police create it admitted to us that she intentionally gave them the wrong description.
And there's more. Have you heard that Speedway was a pleasant little town, like something out of the Andy Griffith Show? Well, that may have been true if you happened to be white. If you were a person of color, then things were very different. Have you read that the empty restaurant was discovered by an off-duty employee who stopped by to visit his friends? That's true, but it's not the whole story. A different teenager was the first to come across the deserted building. He may have perhaps become a 5th murder victim himself if he had arrived there even a few minutes earlier. This week, you'll hear a story you've never heard before as we speak with Kirk Thompson. Kirk was a close friend of Burger Chef victim Mark Flemmonds. Over the years, Kirk himself faced scrutiny from police investigators, who suspected he might have known more about what happened than he wanted to admit. My name is Áine Cain.
And I'm Kevin Greenlee.
And we're The Murder Sheet, a weekly true crime podcast.
We're continuing the multi-part look into the Burger Chef murders we began last year. Each week, we will be presenting you with new information and context about what happened as part of our miniseries, You Never Can Forget.
We don't just rely on what we've been told or what we've read. We have worked this case ourselves. We decided to do this podcast so we can tell you what we've learned and even clear up a few misconceptions.
We're The Murder Sheet.
And this is You Never Can Forget, The Friend.
Can you start by telling us what your life was like in 1978 in Speedway?
Man, my life was, I don't know, my life was crazy. Man. I wouldn't say crazy. It was just I had to endure a lot of racism back in 1978. I grew up in a black community. I went to all black schools until busing came. I was in that area where busing first started. They bused us out into the white communities to go to school, and you know it still wasn't that bad then. But man, I never knew this side of racism until I moved to Indiana.
Can you tell us a little bit about the kind of racism there was in Speedway at that time?
Well, yeah, man, this 78 was the 70s were bad for me. You know, I'm originally from Norfolk, Virginia, and how we got out here was my father graduated from an HBCU, which is a black university in Norfolk State, and he took a job out here in Indianapolis, and we moved out here, I believe in 75, and we stayed on the south side out there in Southport for a while, and when you're the only black people out there, man, you take a hit. Back in the 70s, man, in Southport, I think when I went to school, I was the only black male in the school. And a lot of racism, man, a lot of racism. Thought we was going to get away from that when we moved over to Speedway, but nothing ever really changed, man. Nothing changed at all.
In Speedway, though, Kirk soon became friends with Mark Flemmonds, who would later become one of the 4 victims in the Burger Chef murders. Though he didn't immediately realize it, the Flemmonds family lived in the same apartment complex as Kirk.
How I met him, you know, we went to school, Speedway. I never knew he lived across the street from me because they never really came out that much. But when I met him in school, it's always a good thing when you see someone that looks like you, and you're not the only one. So you automatically cling. You know, you automatically come together. Then I found out he lived in the same apartments, and we were buddy. And you know, he rode to school with us in the morning because Speedway didn't have buses, so you had to either walk to school or catch a ride. You know, and we was friends, just good friends, always together, always.
In terms of his family, did you get to know any of the other Flemmonds kids or parents?
Yes. I knew he lived with 2 sisters. One name was Bonnie, I believe, and the other name was India. I knew he had a brother. I seen him a couple of times, but he didn't live in the apartments. I just knew Mark and his 2 sisters there. We was all close, you know, because we was outnumbered, you know. It was so black people tend to stick together, move together when you're in those types of situations.
What was the apartment complex like?
We lived in Big Eagle. It wasn't that bad, but it was a few out there. We had a Speedway cop was a jerk that stayed across the hall from us. But living in the complex wasn't that bad. It was just going to school, man. Going to school, dealing with it on a daily basis, bro.
Do you remember the name of that officer?
No, I don't.
You say he was kind of a jerk. Can you kind of tell us what he did or what he was like?
Well, you know, he you know, I guess when the police officer lives in an apartment complex, they kind of serve as security. He was always out and about, you know, asking questions as we was hanging out and stuff, you know, just that type of person, you know.
Do you think he had any racist tendencies?
Oh yeah, Speedway cops were known for that. You know, we was always told, especially when I started driving, man, Speedway cops. They were jerks anyway. I seen them pull over, some friends that I had in school. But man, you definitely had to be on your P's and Q's when you driving the Speedway. Those jerks pull you over for anything.
Kirk soon came to know Mark well.
We hung out. We did a lot of things. Mark had some strict parents. They were Jehovah's Witnesses, so they had a whole different lifestyle. You know what I'm saying? And his dad was kind of strict on him. But we'd get out and we'd talk, play, basketball or whatever. We walk to school together sometimes. We walk home together. Mark, I remember when he got the job at Burger Chef. I wasn't old enough to start working yet, but I always wanted to work there with him. I knew everybody that worked there. I was always in the place with him.
Did you know any of the other victims who?
I knew all of them.
Oh wow!
I knew all of them. Jane, yeah, the manager. Oh yeah, that was my buddy. That was my buddy. And she promised me a job as soon as I turned 16.
Oh man, that's really heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Wow. What was she like?
She ran a good store. She did her job. She was always nice, and I never knew her any other way. I come in. Are you looking for Mark? Aren't you? Yeah, he's back there somewhere. Yeah. I wave at him, talk to him. He'll come up front with talk. I get a discount on a burger. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Sit there and, just hang out. Basically, we had a little teenager game/dance over across from there in the Speedway shopping center called the Galaxy. And I used to go over there on Friday nights, maybe Saturday nights. And, Mark never went over there with us. I don't think he was allowed to go and hang out with us. We go over there, play video games, foosball and stuff, hang out, listen to music, dance and stuff, But Mark never went over there with us. I don't think he was allowed.
Wow. I mean, that's wild that you did you know Ruth and Danny as well?
Yeah. I would come in and speak to them. They all knew me. They all thought that Mark and I were brothers.
Oh no!
The school thought Mark and I was brothers. That's what I'm saying. There's only two of us in there, and they put us together as brothers. We were never brothers, but we was close friends.
The Galaxy. What was that like? Can you tell us a bit more about the atmosphere in there?
Yeah, it was just a teenager hangout. Kids from high school, everybody goes there, hang out, party. That's what we did back in the day. That was the disco era.
Mm-hmm.
We hung out there and drank soda pops, eat potato chips, play games, listen to the music, dance, just have fun. Great place to meet your friends and just hang out.
I love disco, so that sounds pretty fun.
Yeah. That was a disco era, yeah, so yeah, we that was our hangout every weekend. That was our hangout, man.
What kind of, I'm just more curious now because I love disco. What kind of songs would they play?
Oh, they played all the 70s songs, man. Oh, that disco was popular. I loved it. You have a whole mixture of kids, white, black, everybody in there just having a good time. You never had any problems. You always had a police officer out there, and I think the admission was like $2 to get in on Friday nights and stuff. When the DJ come and he play music, and everybody just partied.
Over the years, people have spread different stories and rumors about Mark. We asked Kirk about one of the biggest ones.
In terms of, and to be very clear, we're asking this just because there's been so many rumors over the years. We're not judging Mark in any way.
Right.
But did you know him to ever use or sell drugs at all?
I never knew Mark to be a user or a sale. If Mark was doing drugs, I knew nothing of it.
Yeah.
Maybe he kept that part from me, which was cool. I never knew him to do that. We just hung out. We go to school together, walk home, walk to school, especially on the nice days or something. You know, the walk wasn't that bad. Some days I did have to walk, but a lot of days my mom took us to school. They'd come over in the house, hang out in the bedroom. You know, we talk, listen to music, watch TV, watch the football games or something. But, you know, I noticed one day me and a couple other friends, we out in the apartments, we tossing the football, and this white guy came up in this old white car. I'll never forget it. And it was asking for Mark. You know what, Mark? I thought it was one of Mark's buddies. I'm like, man, he probably up at the house, you know. Stay in that building over there, go holler at him. You know, he never did. He just took off. I thought that was strange. I told the officers that too. You know, they try to get, but did you get a license plate? No. I wasn't thinking like that, man. I wasn't thinking like that. If he was into anything of that nature, he definitely kept it away from me.
It was an older white dude?
Yeah. Hippie like dude, you know, was looking for him.
One topic that kept coming up again and again in our talk with Kirk was how difficult it was to be a young man of color in the Speedway, Indiana of 1978.
Like I told you, Speedway wasn't it for me, you know? It wasn't it, man. Those guys was ruthless, man. As far as I'm concerned.
Like with bullying?
Yeah, big time, man. Big time bullying. That school was, I never liked Speedway. I've always tried to get my parents to let me go to Ben Davis, man, but they wouldn't do it. I didn't like anything about Speedway.
Why wouldn't they let you go to Ben Davis?
I don't know. I guess they didn't want to take me up there. You know, for years, man, I often wonder. You know, my father is passed away now, and I often sit back and try to think, why do we go this route? Why do we go to these schools? Why do we live in these neighborhoods? And you know, I don't know. Maybe he wanted us to, you know, have a better life, man. But when we was in those schools, man, it was terrible. Man, we got treated like trash. That's putting it lightly. Man. I always said, man, if I ever get a chance to tell my story, man, Speedway High School sucks. I don't know if it's changed or not now, but it was awful, man. It was awful. You know, it was just bad, man. It was just bad. Every day at school, you bully, you call the niggas and all of this and that, you know. You know, and they got their little groups, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. You know, you go to the lunchroom, sit by yourself, or I had a friend there. We did have a good friend there. His name was Steve Cater. We're good friends on Facebook now. We all sit at the lunch table together. We sit at the same table, the same seat every day. There won't no venturing around, try to sit somewhere else. No, they won't having that. They wasn't having that. Me and Mark sit there at lunch, and we'll talk to Steve Cater.
I'm sorry you had to. I mean, I'm sorry you went through all this, and it's like, you know, and he was your friend throughout all that, and then losing him must have been awful.
Yeah. It was a mess over there, man. I never liked it, man. I always stayed in trouble, man. And I was always the bad guy. You know? I was always the bad guy.
It sounds horrible.
Yeah, but, you know, no one knew what we go through. They don't know what, you know, the things people say to you to make you respond, to react. You know what I'm saying? And, I had a sister there, so, she got it too. I had to protect her, so, it was crazy, man. It was crazy. I look back on the day, man, I tell you, I would never put my kids through that. But times have changed.
In terms of Mark, going through like what sounds like an awful environment like that, did he ever get into any fights with people, or was, how did sort of he navigate that?
I never knew Mark to get in any fights. They would say things amongst themselves. They wouldn't really put it out there. Mark was probably about 6 feet tall back then, and they might have been a little bit intimidated, but I heard the talk, but don't get me wrong, there was a lot of them that loved Mark. Mark had that type of personality.
Yeah, from people we talked to, he sounds like a fun guy, like a nice guy.
Great guy, man. Great guy, man. He didn't deserve what happened to him.
No.
None of them did.
Kirk still has clear memories of November 17th, 1978, the night the 4 Burger Chef employees would go missing and be murdered.
In terms of the night that the disappearances happened, and of course, it turned out to be murders later on, what do you remember about that sort of day and your interactions with Mark from that day?
I'm gonna tell you, that day we were together. Now, I wanted to go to the Galaxy and hang out, and my father wouldn't let me walk by myself over there. He didn't want me to walk home by myself, so I asked Mark, I said, man, what time you get off? He said, I get off at 12. I said, okay, cool, man. So I'll meet you and we'll walk home together. That's the only way I can go to the Galaxy. Because I don't think he had to work that night. And he went on in to work anyway for somebody.
Mark was filling in that night for his co-worker, Ginger, who had asked him to trade shifts with her so she could go out with her friend Brian.
Did Mark mention that he was swapping in for Ginger, or did he just say they randomly called him?
Well, I remember him, somebody called in. I didn't know it was Ginger at the time, but he filling in for somebody. And to me, that was a way for Mark to just get out the house. Because, like I said, his parents was Jehovah's Witness, and they was kind of strict on him. His father was hard on him.
Did he talk about that, or was that just something you kind of got the sense?
Yeah, we talked about that, and then his sisters confirmed it. They really couldn't do a whole lot. He had to be in the house, and things like that. They lived that lifestyle.
There's been quite a bit of talk claiming that Mark seemed upset as he went to work that night. Some people have even gone so far as to speculate that his unhappiness meant he had some sort of advanced knowledge that something terrible would occur at the Burger Chef that evening.
His mood was cool. He was like, man, I'm going to go in here and make this money. They called me in, man. He said, but just come on over, man. We'll walk home together. That way I ain't got to walk home by myself either, because, man, back then, man, like I said, man, 2 black kids walking down the street in Speedway, that was never good, man. Never good. At midnight, that was never good. So, the best thing was to do was to hurry up and get home. And, we was all happy-go-lucky. I went in there, we sat down, ate, talked to Jane, talked to everybody that day. Never knew what was about to happen.
Kirk went on to the nightclub for his evening of fun.
And so, I'm in the Galaxy. I'm having a good time. Man, you know how you look out the window? I could see the restaurant clear as day across the street. And you could see people in there. And, that's when the restaurant didn't close to 12. The doors was always open, And I said, well, okay. I look at my watch, 11:30. I got 30 minutes. So I'm just playing video games and stuff. And got to watch my watch. I said, well, let me go look out the window again. I still see cars in the parking lot. Ain't nobody left. So I said, okay, I'm gonna go in here and tell my buddy I'm gonna get ready to go. By that time, my favorite song came on. I'm like, oh, man, let me get a quick dance in before I leave here. So after the dance, I come out, I see the cars, and I didn't see nobody, but I saw the cars. I said, well, maybe they're in the back or something, you know. So I walk across the parking lot, get up to the door. I knock on the door. Any other time they would let me in, you know, because they know me. No one. I'm like, man, what are they doing? I'm just banging on the door. I'm looking around. I still see the cars, everybody's cars. I'm like, where the hell they at? So I said, man, I'm going to just go ahead on and walk home. So we had a little path that runs behind the building, which you have to cross over the railroad tracks and just walk through, and you're on Cunningham and just go right over into Big Eagle Apartment. So I saw the back door open. So I said, well, maybe they were taking out the trash or something. So I went to the door. I didn't hear a damn thing. I said, they trying to scare me. So I stood back. I just kept hollering names. Nobody ever come. I said, shit, I ain't going in there. They're going to try to scare the hell out of me. So I just said, I'll get them tomorrow. I ain't worried about it. So I walked on home. So in the meantime, as I was walking home, I saw a Speedway cop had pulled somebody over on 21st Street, which was right there at Cunningham and 21st, I believe is the intersection. And so I didn't pay no attention. I looked and I kept on going down. So I went on home and got in the bed. You know, I'm glad my father did Mark walk with you. I said he was asleep, so I just got on in the bed. So hell, early that morning, we stayed on the first floor, so you can knock on the window. Our bedroom window was like ground level. And his sister knocked on the window and said, Kirk, is Mark over here with you? Did he spend the night with you? I said, no, but I tell you, when he had, because he was supposed to walk home with me last night. And she said, Burger Chef got robbed and they missing. I'm like, what? I'm like, oh, no. So I get dressed and I go up there, and sure as shit, it's all kind of detectives, state police, Speedway cops, everybody up there, you know? I'm like, man, then they want to question me. Man, I went through a lot of questions.
Do you remember what any of those questions were?
You know, when was the last time you saw him? Okay, when you walked home, what was it like? You know, I told them I saw that. They confirmed that the car was stopped. You know, they tried to tell me it was a different car that was stopped, but I told them what kind of car it was and everything. And, you know, I'm telling them, man, I'm like, dude, I don't know, man. I was there. I was maybe 30 minutes or less from being with them. Because when I looked out that window, I saw people in the building, in the restaurant. And I went back to do my last little dancing song, and I come back, they were gone. They were gone. And I talked to detectives. They even gave me a lie detector test, man.
Why did they give you a lie detector test?
I don't know, man. Maybe I was afraid they were trying to put me in that shit. I didn't know. I don't know, man. They gave me a lie detector test and everything.
Was there anything that they didn't ask you that you, like, or that didn't come up that you think would have been important, or did they kind of just go through everything with you?
Well, you know, after the initial interview and everything, they, you know, just, you know, asked me a lot of questions and stuff. I actually moved out of town. I went back to Virginia, where I'm from, and some kind of way, they reopened the case, and the detectives came to my job in Virginia and started questioning me again. They was worried about if Mark and Jane had something going on. And I didn't know. That was the last thing on my mind. You know, they came on my job when I was at Sizzler. They were just giving me the 3rd degree.
Do you remember?
But I was the closest one there. You know, I don't know how no one saw anything at Dunkin' Donuts.
Dunkin' Donuts, of course, was right next door to the Burger Chef. In fact, the two restaurants shared a parking lot.
Yeah, it's pretty baffling because that was open 24 hours. That they know.
Yeah. And people was always in Dunkin' Donuts.
Do you happen to remember the name of the detective was it one detective that kind of kept coming over to you, or was it a different guy?
It was one detective, him and his buddy, and they always wanted to record me. And I'm like, hey, man, don't record me. You know, I'll talk, but don't record me. You can make those things say anything you want them to say. You know, I didn't go for that one. And, you know, but we'll sit down, man, and talk for hours. And they just keep asking me the same questions over and over and just going from one scenario to the other. You know?
I'm curious. I wanted to go back to actually, no, I want to ask you one kind of stupid question. What was the favorite song that that they played that night?
You know, I can't remember, but it was a new song out at that time, and man, I just loved that song. And you can just go up there and just dance freely, man. That's what I did. I can't think of the name of that song to save my life, but that song probably saved my life.
I was gonna say it probably did.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess obviously we're just speculating here, but if you had to sort of like speculate about what happened and why, what are sort of theories that have come to your mind over the years?
Man, you know, I sit down and I think and I think and I think, and you know, I really don't know. Knowing what I know today, how they just totally botched this whole case up. You know, I believe it might have been someone they knew, or somebody that worked there knew, and they didn't want to be known. My thing is, you know, they took him out of the store, and I'm like, I know Mark. Mark would put up a fight. He was strong, man. He could run. You know what I'm saying? He was athletic. You know, I'm like, man, how did they just not just start running or something, you know, once they can? I wouldn't have got in no car with nobody or van. They'd have had to shoot me. They'd have shot me in the back or whatever, but I'd have been good.
Yeah, that's the one thing that's so weird about this is that there are four of them. Where was the struggle?
You know, and the whole time, you know, you just sit back, you watch it on the news and everything. They still haven't found them. And I had a dream that they were found, and I was just like, man, what happened, man? You know, and the damn next day they were found, man. It just broke my heart. Man. That was the only friend I had out there. The only friend, the real friend I had in the school. You know? It just tore me apart, man. I had a hard time getting over that one. I didn't even go to nobody's funeral, you know. At that time, you know, that was creepy stuff to me. I couldn't take it, you know. I really couldn't take it. And, you know, and then, you know, once it all happened, man, you know, it was just a bad day. I didn't want to go to school, but my mother was like, just go ahead on and go, you know, go. And everybody was giving me all these cards and stuff, you know, sorry about your brother. And I'm like, oh, my goodness. It was just an awful day. That whole thing was just a bad moment in my life. My parents was actually scared, afraid for me, man. They really kept a close eye on me then, you know. They didn't want me talking to no more TV cameras or nothing. They shut all of that down. I did a broadcast one day. I was back up there just to try to find out that they find anybody, and I end up doing a interview And some kind of way they put it out quick. My mom called that station, told me they better not put nothing else out. Yeah, man, it was pretty hairy there for a while. You know, my parents they didn't let us go nowhere. You know, we go to school and come home. That's it. Then, you know, once everything died down, then, you know, we was able to, you know, hang out and stuff. But we had a curfew. It was like 12 o'clock. You know, we didn't like that, but at least we did get to hang out for a little while, you know.
I'm sure you noticed that Kirk mentioned a pretty interesting detail. When he was on his way home from the Burger Chef around midnight on the night of the murders, he passed by a police car that had pulled someone over. That incident, and the man in that car, has intrigued students of this case for years. We told you about it last year in You Never Can Forget the Others. A short distance from the Burger Chef, around the time the 4 victims were being abducted, a police officer saw a car driving erratically and pulled it over. The driver somehow managed to throw a loaded .38 caliber revolver out the car window without the officer noticing.
Who was this man? And what was he doing with a loaded weapon so close to the Burger Chef at the time of the crime?
We have looked for him for years, and recently managed to get his phone number. Before calling him, we decided to brainstorm how to handle the conversation. Kevin first got this man's real name from the late Donovan Lindsay, an Indiana State Police investigator who worked this case for years. The driver respected Lindsay, and so we figured we'd mention that Kevin had known him. We also considered how we'd sound to this man. 2 late-night callers bugging him about his connection to a decades-old cold case. We didn't want to be accusatory, so we decided to convey that we thought of him not as a suspect, but as a witness who may have seen something important.
With all of that in mind, we gave him a call.
Hello.
Hi there, my name is Áine Cain. I'm calling with my husband, Kevin Greenlee. We were hoping to speak to you about the Burger Chef case. Donovan told us that you were sort of a witness that night, and we were curious.
No, I was a suspect.
Oh, really? Can you tell us about that?
Who are you now?
We will have much more on that next week. We would like to thank Kirk Thompson for speaking with us, and for sharing his memories of his friend, Mark Flemmonds.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Murder Sheet. As always, thanks to Kevin Tyler Greenlee, who composed the music for The Murder Sheet, and who you can find on the web at kevintg.com.
To keep up with the latest on The Murder Sheet, please make sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Murder Sheet, and on Facebook at MSheet Podcast, or by searching Murder Sheet. If you enjoy listening to The Murder Sheet, please leave us a 5-star review to help us gain more exposure. And send tips, suggestions, and feedback to murdersheet@gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening.